Okay, welcome everybody. This is the fourth NixOS marketing meeting where we discuss marketing in NixOS. Before we start, uh, we should remind ourselves what we are here and how do we work. Please be polite to everybody. Everybody's ideas are different, and most of the time we actually agree with each other. We just don't know how to express it. Listen to other ideas, keep your mind open for new ideas and even to change your own. I know I change my ideas quite often, especially because I'm open to explore new ideas, and I'm definitely wrong a lot of times. Also, let's talk not how to do it exactly specifics, but more in why we're doing it. Also important for the why, for posterity reasons, except if we get really to the topics. New thing which we were guilty in previous meetings, we were a lot of times discussing specifics and trying to come up with a conclusion to the solution that we're discussing. I think we should postpone finding the solution and just have this as a discussion and explore possible options, and then just leave it open, and those interested can meet later on and work on the concrete solution on a PR and present it at the next meeting. This is it. There is one thing which came up in the last 2 weeks. There was never it was, but it was not in a clear way shared, the rough roadmap, how we're kind of splitting the work and when we're doing what. So without any agenda item, I would open just to give us a framework in what we are working in. Of course, this is open for discussion, but it's quite broad, and we might agree upon it. It's just to split in chunks. So as a marketing team, we cannot fix everything at once, although we are quite a big team. So there is a big redesign coming of NixOS. This is coming. We don't know when, but we know it's coming this year, or at least we don't have the exact date. We still need to talk about it. It's one point in the agenda to kind of draw the timeline. But until then, we can still fix, so that we are not only talking, we can already fix the website, and we can work on the content and messaging. So this is the phase of the development of the website that we are currently in, where we will work on the messaging, the content, redesigning maybe the structure. But once the bigger redesign of the nixos.org comes, everything is on the table to be changed. But we'll use the current content that we'll develop as we go as a kind of the entry point for a designer to actually design around it. And most likely a lot of messaging is going to be used later on as well. But what tools are we going to use? What, you name it, all the things we need to decide, everything is on the table to be decided upon. But this later, right? So most importantly, if you do any changes to the website, please know that any technical website changes to the website might go away, most likely, right? So if you find yourself really digging too hard into the problem, might be better to just kind of create a ticket, describe it, and have it be there for the future when we are talking about the website. Asking if this is clear sounds a bit rough, but is the general plan how we are working kind of agreeable? Okay, so the short term, there are a few things that we are redesigning the front, and I would actually maybe start with Graham, because you invited somebody to join us for this meeting. And maybe this would be a opening topic. It's still not on an agenda, but we'll come to it. We'll give another 10-15 minutes for this topic. please.
Sure. Are you referring to LDL or Jeffrey?
LDL. Okay. I completely apologize because I didn't go through the whole protocol, although I've written it on my paper. We have 3 new meeting members, team members, Doman, Jeffrey, and LDL. I would like you to just shortly introduce yourself, like in a sentence or two. You already sent the invitation description, so we all read it, but it's nice for those listening to the recording to get to know you. I'll go by, so Doman, you're first. Sorry, I go by the order alphabetical.
All right, sure. Hey, everyone. Yeah, a few sentences. I guess probably most people know me, but I've been around since about 2013. I'm now fully dedicated to working with Cachix and thus Nix. And I'm here to hopefully be able to contribute some things to make marketing better, as I've talked to a number of people who said that they were always surprised when they got into the community that things are so good and we just don't know how to really kind of funnel that to the world. I guess that's 2 sentences too much, but anyway.
Yeah, awesome. Now, I'm not sure, Jeffrey or Joffrey, please correct me.
It's Jeff. Jeffrey in written form. Hey, you can blame the Day 61 folks. I met a couple of years back going into their introduction to Haskell course, and everything was using Nix shell, etc. And I'm a bit of an operating system nerd. And I was like, what the heck wizardry is this? So I was meant to turn up to learn Haskell. I ended up learning Nix and then NixOS. I spent 3 days hacking on NixOS, and many years later, I'm here. I've had a lot of long talks with people about marketing and image. I think we've got something solid here. And all we really got to do is just repackage it and just improve the branding. So I'm really glad to see like this is happening. So happy to help out.
LDL work?
Hey, you can call me Idlework or Dustin.
Idlework, okay.
Yeah. But I'm a professional Python programmer. Found Nix when I was trying to just improve my dot files. And I've been using Linux a long time and always looking for the best way to, reproduce my development environment. And well, obviously, you guys know there's pretty much nothing better than Nix for that now. So I'm sold, and I'm pretty interested to see how I can help, convince other people that there's nothing else as good as well. So that's all I got to say.
Okay, thank you. If you haven't yet, maybe look at the previous meetings that we had to catch up on certain topics. We sound quite funny on two times the speed, but that's part of the job. Okay, Graham, maybe we can start with the topic which you kind of announced like almost 2 weeks ago.
I'm sorry, I'm looking for which topic that is.
Okay. That was, I think you invited Idlework to
sure.
to give us the insight of how the Docker was all about.
Yeah.
And I think this is...
Yep, cool. So, it was probably a couple years ago, maybe. Dustin was telling me about early days of Docker and how they set up this like fake Docker shell that they could on a web page where people could go play with Docker on a web page, and they recorded like all these sessions and when people went wrong too, and reviewed that to make and hone the user interface of Docker to match what people were expecting and make it less surprising. In general, he and I have talked regularly over the past long time about marketing things. So I think he's definitely been interested in, has some good ideas and some experience in the area. So that's something I'd love to do, find a way to get people into an environment with Nix where they can experiment with it. With their permission, of course, record what they're doing and where things go off the rails. I think that'd be some huge market research or like user experience research.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about that, and it's been so many years, I don't have any specific examples in mind any longer, but I do remember one of the interesting discussions inside the company was that people on Hacker News would complain very loudly about certain aspects of how the CLI worked. But we had the data that showed that people were trying to use it this way. And so it was kind of hard to without showing all of that data, because that's not something they were ever interested in doing. But without showing all that data, it was hard to, get out there and argue back, look, what you're saying, you're making a great argument, but we have all these users who expect it to work this way, and so that's why we've made it that way. And that argument on Hacker News, and Reddit was never worth having in public, but that's the discussion that was happening internally.
Is there any I guess there was some kind of a setup that you could actually do this? Have is that something already available that we could reuse, or we need to come up?
An early employee just wrote it from scratch, and he basically just built it all, I think in Angular JS or something like that. And he would just follow what the CLI was doing, and he had this whole model. There was a legit model behind the thing that was tracking the state of what you were doing, so that the simulator was, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but not accurate, but it did a good job of simulating the experience of creating containers, and then when you list them, they're there. It was pretty sophisticated. I don't know if any of you used it, but something like that should be possible with Nix. I wouldn't see why not.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, so I do remember it, and actually I wasn't aware it wasn't a real implementation. I wasn't aware I wasn't actually at a console with Docker.
Yeah, it wasn't actually Docker. It was this whole just facade with, and in doing that, he was able to, put his instrumentation into the implementation, and that's how he was able to get all of this data and know that someone was trying one thing and then failed or whatever it was. Maybe I don't know exactly how it worked. I never looked exactly at the code, but what they were able to do was pull a bunch of metrics out of that and put it into, I don't know if it was Grafana, but put it into graphs and show look, at this point in the tutorial, basically 80% of the people are gone. So let's look at what's happening here. Is there something we can say differently that keeps people going? Or what's going wrong here?
So just for what it's worth, I think we could talk for a lot of hours about this.
Mm-hmm. Just one question: how much effort, was dedicated to analyze those things?
How much effort was put into analyzing the metrics?
Yeah, or even in generally, how much was there?
A lot of effort went into making it. It was this guy was pretty much allowed to just work on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
so yeah, it took a guy, all of his full time just working on that.
Quite the effort.
And once they started getting metrics out, the company itself was okay, yeah, we definitely want to keep you working on that. And we're actually going to have other people in the metrics team work with you so that they can create reports from the data that you're getting out, so you don't have to focus on that. So multiple people technically.
Okay.
Could be interesting to define what a minimal prototype with like the bare bones feature set that could possibly give us some useful data of that would look like with Nix. To think through that, and then probably have a better estimate of whether it's realistic for us to try establishing something like that.
And Graham is probably right. We could probably design and implement this thing on our heads right here in the meeting, but we probably just start thinking about it offline.
Okay. I think this is
I'm just looking at your agenda, and it's huge.
Yeah. We're not going to go through full of it, so maybe let's conclude this discussion. I think it's on all our minds that we need to put what we do to the test, and yeah. Okay. First item, David, community page redesign.
Yes, I can share my screen.
This work was already merged, correct?
Yes,
okay.
It's live on the website
Yeah.
already.
And this should also prepare us for the next item. So you can just keep sharing, and we'll go also to the donate page.
Yes. So you'll see my window. And that's the old community page from the Wayback Machine. It's a huge page with a lot of content that don't even belong there, like contributing to NixOS that don't has anything to do with the community, and bug reports and documentation and source repositories. That's all not really community topics. But then here the discourse forum, IRC, blogs, meetup. That's community things. So I created this community page which has all these places where people can go to meet other people from the community and talk to them and discuss the development. And I think it's really great to have all this on my screen. It's a 19-inch screen, so many people have bigger screens.
Very nice.
Thank you. Because when someone goes to the community page, what they're actually after is the human element. Like, I got involved because I met a human. If I get dumped with a whole wall of technical things when I get involved, I may not have the decision to get involved. So the decision to get involved is an emotional one. So this page needs to be like kind of like emotional support or emotional things. So
Yes,
thank you.
totally. And it can be even better than this, but it's a huge improvement, I think. Okay.
Yeah. I think this is great. Like we can then change small things and experiment.
Yes.
You name it, but it's a great start. I guess we can go to the next item, donate page, or it's something else.
Yes. The donate page come from this because I deleted a lot of content from the community page and it should be on the website again. So this whole donation thing and acknowledgement, I created an own site for that with some nice text here, and it's not so cluttered, and this
Looks
list
great.
works.
I think the addition was also like before this, the store, which we talked in the meeting number 1, I think, or 2, is now just a way how you can donate as well, right?
Yes.
And of course, everything here can be improved.
I'm unsure about this open collective. thing with all the faces here, because the contribute button is quite hidden. I don't know if we want to have this.
Yeah, so I've done quite a lot with OpenCollect over the last year. My comments are that should be higher. Like you should have something separate for the donate above the fold, but also show the faces. A lot of people potentially have concerns about showing faces. Maybe you're not showing good gender diversity, but like if that's what it is, it's what it is, and then we work on improving gender diversity other ways. Depending on how you've implemented that, I have had quite a lot of problems with SEO spam. It seems that the companies that are smart enough that this is a really smart idea for marketing spend happen to be more along the lines of online casinos, etc. So just keep an eye out for that type of stuff. If you're using hyperlinks, make sure you do no follow. But yeah.
Yeah, good idea. So we could just have a contribute button here and move this to the acknowledgement section.
Okay. Since this is like an action item, is anyone willing to take it over?
If no one wants, I can look into it.
Okay, I will remind you in the meeting minutes.
Yes, great.
And create the ticket if you don't do it already.
Yeah, just have a look at the community page again. So we have some things left. I think that's also the next topic, the contribution guide.
Mm-hmm. Just before we go to the contribution guide, there is one thing I'd like to discuss regarding the donation, especially going forward. If our AWS account gets like that, we'll have to start covering mostly from the foundation. Like we need to be thinking a bit ahead, how we can do it better in attracting the donate, at least having a plan when that happens. How can we drive more donation that could actually in the future cover, hopefully, our costs? And what would those items be? I mean, that we would need to.
I think this first step is done to have it here that we need the donation, that we depend on it. And I think the donate page here in the menu, that's also a good thing. So people see it, that it's possible to donate and it's also needed.
Yeah, so some context. People donate because they want essentially to get something out of it, right? And by displaying their avatar, they're getting something out of it, especially so if they're a company. There's a lot of there's a lot of narrative right now about how you can actually do Kickstarter type or Open Collective type things and what type of services you can offer. For companies, it's really simple. For example, Webpack many years back discovered that, well, to sponsor a conference is what min spend, a lot of times 50K, but like that's nothing to a company. That's everything to us, especially with AWS bill coming up. But like 50K, you can drop it instead of it being on like a 2 or 3 day event where there's a limited maybe 1,000 attendees and then they disappear. You can have your brand in the documentation. I don't know how people feel about this, but that has been their road to success, and that is essentially why they're at. I think when I last interviewed them, it was like 400,000 US a year. Basically, companies just realizing they can hire brilliant engineers who are looking at that documentation every day. It's kind of like the Stack Overflow approach with their business model with marketing. So, yeah. Framing it right is very important.
Maybe going like there is, because you said, what do they get? What does somebody that donates gets out of it? I think there is exactly what they're paying for would be almost 90% would be the binary cash, right? And that's like a huge proposition. I would maybe ask Ilko, how would Foundation feel about exposing some of this information of where the money gets spent, or what's the position if
I mean, it's supposed to be exposed, but right now the expenses on Open Collective are not updated. I just pinged Rob about it.
So it's just a matter of getting things out
Yeah.
on the open. And do we also have the current? So this is our income. Is also expenses are known.
Sorry, what do you mean?
So probably we know how much donations we're getting. So this is the income, and
Yeah, so
we also know the expenses and kind of projection. We can then go from there.
Well, we know what our expenses are, but they're not done via Open Collective, so we manually need to put them in Open Collective. So we pay, for example, Hetzner, several Hetzner machines, but yeah, that's done via the credit card of the foundation, so it's not directly connected to Open Collective.
The main thing is really just to use communication functionality, like the mailing list functionality to communicate with your backers. So just remind them, like, we're deriving value, thank you, right? And like engage and like send a whole bunch of Nix stickers in the mail. So if like the cost of acquisition is like $5, spend $6, right, on stickers and international postage of mail, and then you get it back the next following month for the next donation. That type of logic. Just give something back to them.
I guess it's not just getting the money, but just getting enough money so that we can cover the expenses. I'm just a bit worried, for the future and trying to plan ahead a bit there. But yeah, I think we're 4 minutes into this discussion. I think we can pass to the next item if nobody else has something to say. So please. Okay, David, the next item.
Okay, so we go back to the old community page. Here is a whole section about contributing and reporting bugs. And I think we should have it somewhere on the website. So I thought, where should it go? And I created a first guide. We have it also live on the website already. It's here on the Learn page. And it's kind of a guide, but more a list of resources where you see how to contribute to Nix packages, to NixOS, or even the website.
I'll take a bit of a blame for the positioning of this and calling it a guide. It might turn out to be a guide, but I wanted to have a place where we can start collecting interesting, like beginner-friendly instructions how to work with Nix, and being target being the beginners, the website, the target audience being the beginners more. That's why we chose to put it above the reference manuals, so to say.
Yes, and when we have the footer, it can go. There can be a link how to contribute, so it's have a prominent place, and people see they can contribute to this.
I guess this opens, because now it's the only guide, this opens the place to put more of guides.
Yes, that's also the topic. What guides do we want? Should it only be user guides or also contributors guide? For example, I've done a backport last week, and I have looked at the documentation, and it was not really clear how to do it. So I had done some research and updated the documentation, and it's good now. But I thought, should that also be a guide, how to backport things, or is that too technical for a guide?
I will. It's for beginners, so that should be the question. And I think there Ilko wants to speak, and then Samuel.
Sorry, did I want to speak?
You click the button then.
Oh,
okay.
okay. Sorry.
Probably. Okay, Samuel?
I think this comes back to the discussion of the documentation. Currently, it's one big monolithic document. These are things, the how to contribute, how to backport, that are already part of the documentation, but it's part of the ocean of documentation that we have into one big page. This probably would be helped if we could revise how it's built, how it's being maintained, so that we have distinct pages, and those are brought back into the guides section. Not sure if I'm clear.
I can try reiterate, and then you say if
Yeah.
I understood correctly, or if somebody else wants to.
I think I have understood it. So he said that we have a documentation page like other projects where you have a list of the topics on the left, and when you click on it, it's a single page on the right for just that topic, and not have a huge page with all the topics on it.
And go ahead.
No. Continue.
Okay. And it's about the way we currently have one huge page to contribute into. The information for the backports is already in the manual. It's not necessarily great. I think it's been improved from that from what David just did, but these should be distinct pages, so we can so it's all of the documentation should be separated into distinct topics, and these guides should be topics part of the documentation. That maybe reiterates my points more clearly.
Yeah.
I think. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't.
You should be able to everything should be hyperlinkable in that sense. So as you get a big enough topic, it should be a separate URL, or at minimum, you should be able to do ahref to an anchor.
I'll just add one thing, which is it's not popular, but it's like I don't want to go into the discussion of changing the manual or any of them. I want that's not the purpose why this is completely separate from manuals. Why this is done outside completely, it's because we can do it now, and then either once the documentation decision is done, we can take it there and they're used.
Yes, sorry, I wasn't really great at saying it up front, but this is something that we need to keep in mind, that yes, we want to it's great to rewrite those as part of the website because we can do it, but this should be kept in mind that they should be in the documentation instead of being a website artifact, in my opinion.
I think as we go further, right, we will see that what is actually needed, and we can test it. And I hope, especially now that Doman joined, that there will be more guides, because I think he's talking about writing the guide, many of them, for quite some time. And I think maybe Doman, you can take what would you expect from which guide would be next? You had some ideas, so I'm kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of guides that I want to write, or I think they're more like tutorials, but I don't know which one is really next. There is a bunch of common ones that people ask all the time. One is, I think that the installation of NixOS should be probably extracted into a tutorial. There is the Docker and Nix story. There is how to integrate Nix shell into a development kind of thing, and so on. So I think those are the few that should be just there and just go really step by step by installing Nix and so on until yeah. They're more, I mean, some of them are guides, some of them are tutorials. So again, this is all details, but
I guess installing Nix, but tutorials guides are more or less the same because these two words are interchanging in all the websites that we checked so far. It's hard to draw a line in between. What's a guide? What's a tutorial?
I mean, it's just technical nitpicking. I mean, documentation nitpicking. Like, guide is supposed more like to achieve a goal, where tutorial is supposed to teach you something. But those, you can do both. So,
yeah. Edward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point out, since I heard Domin mention all those points, the dev environment and the Docker story is something that I tried addressing also in this quick start guide that I mentioned in the agenda. Not sure whether everybody had a look at this, but we're coming to that later. Well, maybe, who knows, if time permits. Yeah, it's maybe interesting to see whether this could be a first iteration.
Let's maybe at this point close with the thing that whoever is interested in kind of this guide, maybe work together with Edward to kind of refine the current proposal that you have. And, from there you can propose more guides and, provide a system where we can say like, oh, this is needed. When we see that somebody's lost, we can just write, okay, is this something that we would like to spend time on? So this is the topic. Contribute, yeah. And now we go, the next topic is mine. It's the landing page.
Yes.
Oh, damn it. Oh, you stopped sharing. Okay. Landing page. While I talk, I'll try to share it. I can't do both. Come on. Now I guess you see yourself. So the landing page, there is some messaging that it's controversial, especially regarding the NixOS naming, which at one point we already discussed, but I think we'll have more discussions on regarding this. Let me just scroll down to get the preview. There we go. There was already a discussion on the channel. There we go. So design is not there and it doesn't work on mobile, but there are a few things that need to be still done. Shortly, there are two paragraphs. One is about the package manager. The other one is about distribution. The title, I think it conveys the message, and me personally, I like it. On the right side, there's going to be this ASCII cinema video, probably going through all the examples that are in the develop, build, and deploy buttons, so to say. Now, if you think that, like, when I first saw that how verbose these examples are, I was like, yo, that should be just like, it should be shorter, right? Like, people will get scared. But to be honest, this is the current reality of Nix, right? Whenever somebody tries Nix, this is what they get. And maybe that should be like, this is the reality. And yeah, so we have developed on the left 2 examples of Nix shell, on the right how to actually create a simple shell, and then kind of enter it and commit that file. So on the first page, I'm already showing Nix, the language, which very soon also every newcomer that tries to work with Nix ends up. And then on the left side, so the build part, it's like it's still missing that why would you build Docker images with Nix, but that part needs to be added. But how to do it, it's there. And on the right side, it's like declarative cloud images. So, for example, Amazon EC2 images. Oh, okay. So this is the building, and then the deploying is, and the deploying part is more. So one site is going to be about NixOps. Like a simple example, I think that's the easiest way to deploy now with Nix. I think now we can change for something else. And the left side is either integration, how it's basically like the Nix builds integrate with your deployment story. So either it's integrating with the CI or the Terraform and so on and so on. So that's the current vision. And comments, especially about maybe we can go back to this description, which is so controversial.
I'm not looking at the particular language, but I think that both Nix and NixOS have some philosophical commonalities in their beliefs, and there's no reason why either has to take a downside, like a back seat. Maybe we just highlight the beliefs, like reproducible builds and deployments is huge. Productivity is a thing that we haven't mentioned here because we've got binary caching, we've got source and binary substitutability. So there's big features and benefits we're not highlighting. There's a whole bunch of other tenets that could take like a front seat over than the actual individual technology. But I think it's important to clarify Nix and NixOS somewhere very above the fold what the difference is.
I think maybe the backstory about why I actually chose the NixOS, we decided like it's confusing to people. You're on the NixOS website for Nix package manager, and then like there is a NixOS package and there is a Nix language. It's confusing, especially to everybody I introduced this. Like it was always confusing, but yeah. And I don't think there is an easy way out from this.
Unless we create this narrative that, yes, it is the NixOS package manager, and the NixOS package manager runs on all the different operating systems. But like really, like eventually you'll realize those other operating systems could be done better, so you'll upgrade to NixOS in time. But we don't force it upon you. NixOS package manager works on all distributions and different architectures. That's just maybe some supportive thing, but yeah, I agree. It could be for us controversial, but for people who are just getting started, it makes sense.
I'm not seeing. Sorry, I'm sharing the screen, so I'm not seeing the hands. So just please unmute to talk.
Go ahead.
I already discussed it with Rock yesterday, I think. And I came up with a story that Nix is the package manager developed for NixOS. So we can have this features NixOS has, but it can also be used on other systems. This is how we could present it.
I'd like to, but I think that's I mean, that's not really the case, right? And also not the message that we want to convey. So you don't have to use NixOS.
I was going to say I like to present it in the opposite way. Like looking at these two paragraphs, if this is going to be the first thing that people see, I think we could shorten this down to just 2 sentences, right? Like Nix is a modern package manager with serious reproducibility guarantees. And then the next blurb, NixOS is a flavor of Linux that uses Nix to its full potential, exclamation point. And now you've communicated the point without being so accurate in your blurb. Like the blurbs are overtly accurate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
But how can we avoid? So this is already the 20th iteration of at least that I came up with in the last week.
I mean, this is basically what the current homepage says. So it has two paragraphs. What is Nix? Nix is a powerful package manager for Linux and other Unix systems. And then the second paragraph, so to the right of it, what is NixOS? NixOS is a Linux distribution built on top of the Nix package manager. And it says things about the properties that are nice. I mean, I don't think that the current description on the current homepage is too bad. But yeah.
One way we can avoid this going around and around is what we're talking about here is copywriting. We can actually use money to actually hire a copywriter and get them to really look into the emotional side of it. Yes, we're being very precise, and precision is really important to us. But like on the front page, it's probably an emotional message you want to convey, and we're probably not the best at articulating those type of things.
Yes, we already discussed it in the first meetings that we don't want to be so technical how we be right now and improve that.
Just one thing. This is not any emotional thing, but it's like true. I think with the whole copywriting, yes, we should do it if we get the money, and how much I don't even know how much that costs. But one thing we can discuss is Nix or NixOS. I think for me this is I noticed that this gets confused by a lot of them, by a lot of newcomers, and I don't prefer any of the two solutions, but I think that the current situation is the worst, like having Nix and NixOS. So I would rather have Nix operating system or Nix the package manager, or like just choose one, like that's
Sure. So then you pick the Nix package manager.
And then
NixOS is something that comes later, but I mean, it's something maybe you could mention it under the deploy example. So you've developed and you've built your application. Now you're deploying it, and one of the ways you could deploy it is as, say, a VM running NixOS, but so that de-emphasizes the NixOS aspect.
So we could focus on one of them and both at the same time, like we discussed on IRC just before the meeting. So we have another domain for Nix, and nixos.org is just for the operating system, and for example, nix.io could be just for the package manager.
I think you could probably get away with keeping the one website if you just clarify right away, like, here's a package manager and we have an OS that uses it to its full potential. But I have to agree that making a separate website where Nix.io is our central marketing, like when you tell somebody about the project for the first time, you tell them about Nix.io, and there we can establish that concept that there's a new package manager that has really great reproducibility guarantees and whatever we want to show on that website. And then you can, off to the side, say, try NixOS, an operating system made, like we were just saying, made to put it to its full potential. And then Nix becomes our actual product focus. We don't want to limit ourselves in any way to just NixOS. That is more of like a proving ground for just how good Nix can be. But we want to also put front and center that Nix is a package manager that's going to work on OS X, that pretty much any Linux-like environment that you've got,
Yeah, I agree with that. So ideally, we would have Nix.io or something like that. And NixOS would just be a page underneath that. So basically the inverse of what we currently have, where we have nixos.org/nix. But that's only because nixos.org was available and nix.org was not.
Okay, I'll end the discussion here and with the action item to explore the nix.something domain. If somebody volunteers, that would be great to explore what are the potentials, and then in the short run, we'll have, like in the short period, we'll put both of them on the same website in a similar fashion that we have, with a bit more emotions. But in the long run, maybe even when we consider redesign, we might have actually redesign of 2 websites. And we can have this discussion again the next meeting. Would that be fine with everybody?
I just can I just give 3 minutes of feedback?
Yeah, sure.
Because I think this is kind of important. It's the
Yep.
first thing that people see. So, so my thinking about this, I've spent a reasonable or unreasonable amount of time thinking about the landing pages lately. So one of the main things you kind of want to convey here is to capture the emotion of the person that comes onto the website, which is like, I'm frustrated, I'm ready to move on. That's usually the case because somebody gets you a solution, and like currently we're describing too much and trying to put things into buckets and so on. In my opinion, I would completely get rid of the distinction in the first place and just keep saying like what are the pain points we're solving, and don't even say if it's Nix or if it's an NixOS at all, and just try to capture like it doesn't have to be the typical, oh, do you have back pain, here are some pills, but like like we these are the kind of set of things we're trying to solve, and of course the main one, the reproducible builds and deployments, is for sure something I think Nix really stands out and should be the main headline. And then we want to mention all the other things. But I mean, I guess I'm saying I would mostly get rid of those paragraphs in the first place and maybe just expand the slogan a bit more. And then at the bottom right now, there's a lot of examples, but I don't know, like someone who doesn't know anything about Nix, if they just see these snippets of code, that's confusing to me. Like I know nothing about Nix, and now you're showing me code, which is great to some degree, like to show how it's done. I think if you look at trypyramid.com, what they come up with, I think they have like a button like try it out or like something like this. But all these examples should be like titled with like maybe, I mean, it's trying to be more like a tutorial or a getting started guide than like what does Nix really solve, in my opinion. Anyway, my 3 minutes are up.
Let's just have this landing page is a bit like having 2 weeks set, every 2 weeks discussion about it. It's like we were discussing actually quite the opposite points previous week, which is fine. I mean, that's awesome. Let's have a meeting only about landing page, and everybody that's interested, it's going to be next week, some evening time, 9 o'clock. Those who want, they can participate.
Before we wrap it up, I do want to just say that it does seem like there's a deeper discussion here than just what does the landing page say. Like, it seems like there's a question of, what is the product? Is there 2 products? Is there 2 products but one main product? Or should we try to hide the distinction between them and try to sell one thing with many properties? I think there's like a deeper discussion there. And I think that everyone sort of needs to be aligned in that respect, because that's going to inform, that's why you're probably having this discussion every 2 weeks because it's not really clear. We're not all aligned spiritually on there's 2 products, but one central. We're going to focus on Nix. Everyone needs to understand what Nix is. It's much easier to communicate, oh, and then there's an OS that uses this package manager. I think that we should probably all come to a consensus relatively soon on that so that these decisions are clarified. Also, I think that's going to help us understand just how important it is when we try to show a quick start of what Nix is, just how steep the initial upfront cognitive cost is to start interacting with Nix. Like, I know that's an even deeper question of things like graphical UIs and DSLs on top of Nix, and that is a whole can of worms. But it really comes back down to what is our product and how easy is it to stop somebody on the street and say, look at this, aren't these value propositions amazing? And oh, look how easy it is to use. And once we're there, that's our objective. Then the changes that need to be made to Nix and what we want to say on our landing page, I think will become clarified.
I completely agree. I think what's the point here is that this needs to, like, there is a short plan that we need to improve the current website, but in order to do a redesign, a bit like when the time comes, we need to know all these answers. That's true, and be on the same page. What do we want to do? What do we redesign? Right? But let's say for the next 2-3 months, we can improve the website already, right? Even if it's not perfect, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So I'll still propose to go on with the NixOS, have both of them on the same page. Don't change it's going to be Nix Package Manager, NixOS, the Linux distribution, similar, just a bit better, and then we move on. And it's like at least we'll have something on a short runner that we can be like more honest about the current situation. And then yes, we should have all these discussions, and I'll in the meetings, in the minutes of the meeting, I'll put them for the next meeting to be discussed again and again and again until we agree. Or yeah, sounds good.
Yes.
The next item, like how we're doing with the time, I think we are almost at 1 hour. I think we can cover one topic. As we were always saying now, I would like to maybe talk about the process of a redesign, like a timeline at least, and maybe a budget, if that would be, and kind of skip the commercial support on the part of the website and do this next time.
Could we
Any other proposal there?
I made a pull request for the commercial website. So could we shortly discuss if we want to merge it already?
Yeah. Let's then do.
I think the information should be on the website.
Let's then discuss it on the ticket, because that's possible to do it in the reply of the ticket. Yeah.
Yes.
So the redesign process, there are 3 things that I'm kind of interested in, which I wrote, and there might be more. What is our budget? How professional do we want to get? Do we want to hire an agency, a small agency, big agency? How much that costs for maybe some people know and have experience. What's the timeline? And what do we need to prepare for it? And because I talk so much, and there are maybe other things, and because I talk so much, please somebody else start, either on a budget, timeline, you name it.
Well, I guess I'll just reiterate that I think a lot of these things will become a lot more clarified if we all have like some object that we're trying to create. and we all have the same object in mind, then it'll make more sense. How much do we want to invest in that redesign? Well, what are our requirements for that redesign? We don't really know what's going to be required. Can we get away with some simple, like, use of color from what we've already got? It's not hard to make a basic web design. Do we really need to hire an agency? Well, it really depends on what we're trying to do with the new website and the new branding and the new, are we going to focus on just Nix and so on and so forth? Once we have that in mind, then I think, do we really want to go big with that rebranding? Is there a big enough message to say, to tell, and to demand that kind of thing? Go ahead, Sam.
I think Ilko had his hand up before mine, unless it was a mistake.
Yeah, sorry, that's a mistake. I don't know why that happens. Well,
No
probably
worries.
I'm hitting a key somewhere.
Probably. Rock, I think you need to first start with explaining what you had in mind about that redesign, that it was how it was supposed to happen after we had this common object in mind and not before we had it. So other people that are less knowledgeable of this situation don't go on a tangent that's not related to the redesign.
Yeah, so the redesign, I know, like, we're still, that's why we started this discussion, and why we have this short plan, right? That we can do something and have the feedback, and then and work on the current website and come up, because once you work, like, I thought it's easy to work on the landing page, but when you need to put the sentence together, it becomes so hard, because every word is wrong that you select. And, like, as we will work, right, what we can already see is how serious we want to be, or how much money we even have that we can afford. Like, is this going to be like, do we want to hire somebody, or do we want to put this for somebody to do it, like, on a pro bono basis, right?
Hey, Rock.
Yeah.
I just want to comment about the every word is wrong bit. Is that we just got to be kind to ourselves and try some stuff, and do something today, and then tomorrow we can do something better.
Yeah.
But then the other thing is that you might be able to collaborate with Idle Work, who seems to not find it so difficult.
Yeah. So for the landing page, next week, right? For the short term. So for the current redesign, right? So for the redesign, not the current, the redesign, it's when I talk about the timeline, if we go for selecting like, this is just the process, things that we kind of need to define. So if we want to select some company, do we need to put out the tender? Like, this kind of organizational stuff, not really. And maybe just the scopes. How much are we willing to be investing in this time? How much of our time we want to invest into this process?
I really feel like we do need to decide what we are going to be making with that redesign. What is the point of that redesign? Everybody knows we want to clarify something. We want to say something with this new website. But before we sit down and talk about how much we're going to invest in telling that new message, we really have to have a solid idea of what that message is going to be. So I think maybe, go ahead.
Sorry. I think this is the missing part, which I should have said, and I think Sam tried to tell me, is our goal is that Nix is in mainstream, right? And of course, we discussed this already, but what does this mean, that Nix is in mainstream? And this is our end goal. let's say 5 years or whatever it takes, right? But that's our end goal.
So I'll just notice that you say that Nix is the end goal. So I'm on that. Like, if I'm going to give my own opinion on this dichotomy and what the whole situation is, I think it's really, really evident that Nix is the product, and that we should throw our weight behind Nix itself, which gives us the most reach, of course. Like I was describing NixOS being a sort of proving ground. So if that's already established, then that's great. If we already know that we want to push Nix forward as like this is our flagship and talk about it primarily, then I think it makes more sense to begin things like budgetary discussions and stuff like that. I wasn't aware that was the case, that there was a consensus behind that. Is there?
I don't think it's consensus, but
I think there was, in the first or second meeting we talked about this, and I think the general feeling was we should focus on Nix. The only issue is that the website is called nixos.org, so it's a little bit tricky terminology-wise, but the general feeling is that NixOS is a more advanced feature that certain users might get into for certain use cases. But Nix is the gateway, and it's, for most users, it will probably be the main thing. We're not trying to get every developer to convert from Ubuntu or macOS to NixOS.
Yeah, I think that's really important to keep in mind, that that's not what we're trying to do, right? Like, NixOS is like, here, look at what we can do with Nix. You could use NixOS if you wanted to, but you can use it on your own Linux or Mac OS or whatever it may be. I'm definitely aligned there.
Yeah, just a little bit more on that is by starting with Nix, we're able to have this really nice ramp of, you've installed Nix, and now you can build a dev environment, and then same thing, can build a Docker container or Docker image, and same thing, you can build a NixOS image, all just on whatever you already have. And so it feels like a much easier ramp for users than saying, like, here's NixOS, go erase your laptop.
Yeah, and here's the configuration.nix, and you have to take on all of the complexity about that. I think one of the very largest problems we have as a technology choice for people, because you can tell them about I do this all the time. I tell people about the reproducibility, the value propositions of Nix, but once you start telling them not how it works, but what they have to do in order to get those benefits, you start losing people immediately. You get people to say crazy things, like people you've respected for a long time will say things like, oh, I don't need reproducibility for my workstation, or, configuration management is good enough. And it's like, if we were to go back in time to before configuration management was a thing, everyone's focus was like, we got to stop writing our own in-house scripts to deploy things. We have the cloud now, a programmable infrastructure. We need to start, creating generalized tools to solve this problem of reproducible server environments, computing environments, essentially. Now that we have a tool that essentially has unprecedented guarantees in that regard, you bring it to people who would otherwise fetishize reproducibility because anybody involved in computers has an intrinsic interest in it. They start to shrug it off in conversation. And to me, that's a signal that our curve is too much like a wall. And I experienced that myself. Like, I'm not a very strong functional programmer, and Nixlang was my first lazily evaluated pure language. And if it were not for like the 3 weeks of like just pure mentorship from Graham and Finisil, I probably would have given up on it too. And so I think that's a real serious issue for us. And so like when you throw that build, deploy buttons in front of people, it's the right idea. We want to show them how easy it is to use Nix, but the fact is it's not easy. And so what you're actually doing is showing people how hard it is to use Nix. And I think that is going to be a serious problem.
So then what you're
I mean, so that's all completely true, and I agree with it. But I mean, we have to stay a bit focused here. So we're not going to fix the documentation as part of the marketing project, right, Rock? I mean, that's rather far outside of the scope of this.
Yeah, I try to like. The idea is that if we go too broad, we might not finish it. I agree with that. These are things we should discuss. I think somebody should write the story down of Nix being the centerpiece of the whole thing, and then come back to us with the whole, like, do a not presentation, but like a few minute speech how and why, and we should not go into details further into discussing this. Or maybe those interested, like, have a separate meeting only on this topic. That would be also good.
All right. So I realized that I'm pointing out.
Samuel wanted to say something as well.
Yeah, it's been a while since I had this raised hand. This is not what this discussion, I think, was supposed to be about, Rock. I think it was supposed to be about the under the assumption that we know what the website is about. And this is something that the newcomers might not exactly know, since I don't know if they listened to the previous discussions, but there is a plan for the next thing, a plan for the medium term, and a plan for a long term. And I think this discussion was supposed to be about how we process with, how we do this redesign, assuming that we know what the website is about. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was, I can only talk from myself why I put it there. I want to have something done by the end of the year. That's kind of the goal. And I think if we go into this too big of the redesign and too big of a change, this might not happen. Not saying that it's not possible, but it's just might not happen. I would rather have a few more stages in between. And yeah, but I understand also the concerns that Jeff mentioned, that once you have the idea what you want, you can easier go towards that. Idle work, Dustin. Yeah.
I think the Dokazar, I'm not sure how to say it. I think he had his hand before me.
Domen.
Domen?
Right.
Sorry, I missed it.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, there is a lot of discussions, but I'll address the one that raised up originally about the design. I would be, well, almost strongly against an agency. I think that like creating design from scratch is pretty crazy these days for a landing page. There's like a lot of teams. There's stuff like Windtail UI, and we can get into the whole discussions if it should be open source or not, and so on. But there is like a lot of tooling, and the components are pretty common on landing pages. It's just like, how do you do the background and all the coloring and fonts and stuff like that. So the budget shouldn't be that big. I mean, I would just buy a theme personally or use the Tailwind UI, with which you can craft a landing page in like a couple of hours. And, that gets us done from the point of view. And then you have all the components you want to really like create these buckets of information. That would be my approach, at least.
I'll work. Dustin, sorry.
Yeah. So 2 points. I wanted to mostly agree with what Doman said, that like we could probably get away with doing this ourselves. We have a lot of talent. But going back, I realized that before I was sort of just pointing out like philosophical problems or like really hard problems that we can't really solve in the short term. But going back to what I said, I think that what we're doing right now, since Nix is hard to use right now, I think that the observation that what we're doing on the website is still relevant. We're showing how hard Nix is. So I think if we can't solve that problem, then we need to change what we're showing on the website, whether that's for the short-term redesign or the long-term redesign. I think we just need to more focus on its value propositions. You know, don't throw how hard it is in people's faces right away. Rather, make sure they're completely sold on the conceptual value propositions. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say, and to not further interrupt budgetary discussions. I think David was next.
Yes.
Sorry.
To the question if we want to hire someone at all or do it ourselves, I think what we have right now is we have a Bootstrap website that's a framework, and we have done what we can, and it looks like any other Bootstrap website. So I have a very strong opinion to hire someone that has a feel for good colors, good how to present something, how to explain something and such. And I can
I think
add.
Samuel raised his hand.
Sorry.
Right, I
Sorry,
wasn't
I'm
sure if
not-
David was. I wasn't sure if he was finished. We can go further than just redesigning the website. It's about designing the image mark of NixOS, and not only the website, which might play in the balance here.
Yes.
Graham?
Yeah, I just want to note that we're actually half an hour over time, and I'm okay on time, but I'm not. You know, if people need to go, they need to go, and if they need to go, should we keep going or not?
Should we continue, or does anybody need to go? Because then we'll all.
I just woke up, so good to keep continuing, and I'd like to apologise. I wasn't aware of social convention raising hands. I'll work on that. Thanks.
Okay, Samuel, you raised the hand.
I shouldn't be raised anymore.
My idea for who to hire, I think we could hire a freelancer that might be interested in these topics and knows how to present them, and not a big agency. I think that would end up in some business website or something.
Does anybody has experience with hiring, especially as an open source community, either a freelancer? What process would you expect?
There is this website, opensourcedesign.org, I think. There's a job board. You can put your job there, explain it, and people can take it. And you can say what your budget is, and it could be even 0.
Sorry, I think Samuel, you raised the hand. I must missed it.
I shouldn't. I think the interface must be broken somewhere.
Okay.
I'm reloading.
Okay. I think Doman also had to go. But let's discuss this then at the later point, if it's fine with everybody. I'll make a few proposals as I open the topic. I'll make a few proposals, and then we can discuss a bit more concretely. For the next time we meet in 2 weeks, we'll move all the non-discussed items of the agenda to the next time, and we meet in 2 weeks, the same time. If I'm not mistaken, this should not be any holidays specific. Is the time okay with everybody? I mean, there's hard to find the perfect time, but
It's quite perfect for me.
I think we got to keep going with this time.
Okay, so that's going to be now the rule. I'm going to follow up with the minutes, and see you next time. And thank you, everybody, for coming and showing the good spirit.
Thanks, Rock. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Rock.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
organizing.
See you later.
Thanks.
Bye.
Good night.